Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1. This body is made by the sword. Blood is as strong as steel, and the heart is as fragile as glass. There are countless battlefields. Although I have never been defeated, I am not understood either. So I always stand on the sword hill and indulge in victory. My whole life is meaningless. This is unlimited sword system. In the dormitory, Ailan opened his eyes and looked at Chiendo on his lap. No, this sword can now be called a Zanpakutō. Stroking his Zanpakutō, Ailan felt incomprehensible emotions. Ailan, in his previous life, was an extremely ordinary social creature. His only hobby was animation novels. Perhaps it was a joke by a certain great being. 30 years ago, Ailan was reincarnated into an anime he once liked, and he also had spiritual pressure. At that time, Ailan, who thought he was the protagonist, happily went through all kinds of hardships from Rukanga and finally successfully joined the Jinang Spiritual Arts Academy. At that time, Ailan was arrogant and thought that the protagonist himself, not to mention 3 years as deputy captain and 5 years as captain, but 10 years as captain for 100 years, was not too much, right? But it is a pity that after 6 years at the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy, Ailan almost failed the assessment of the Godei 13th team and became one of the countless cannon fodder incorporated into the Hueco Mundo Expeditionary Force. In the past 100 years, the war between Soul Society and Hueco Mundo has been raging, and the Hueco Mundo Expeditionary Force has become a veritable death-grinding ground. That is to say, Ailan's shunpo was not bad, so he was accepted by the examiner of the second team. He never imagined that 24 years after accepting that he was very ordinary, he would actually successfully give birth to his own Zanpakutō. Moreover, because of his understanding of this ability, he already knew the name and ability of his Zanpakutō without the Zanpakutō telling him. In the Shinigami world, names also represent power. After the gestation of the Zanpakutō was completed, Ailan's spiritual pressure also increased by 1 level. Currently, it is the 5th level of spiritual power. Feeling his sudden surge in power, Ailan realized that even if he did not free his Zanpakutō, he could still be considered an elite in the criminal army. Then, let's first try to see the difference between our abilities in the Shinigami world and those in Fate. Ailan placed his right hand on the hilt of his Zanpakutō. Blue light emitted from Ailan's hand and turned into blue lines, covering his Zanpakutō. Identification of creative ideas. Determine the basic skeleton. When these blue lines completely covered his Zanpakutō, Ailan could feel that in his mental space, there was the process of making an additional weapon. After the light in his hand dispersed, Ailan entered his own mental space. The grey earth, the fiery red sky, and the edge of the mental space are countless flames and rotating gears. Different from the soul space of other Zanpakutō, there is no actual form of Zanpakutō in the mental image space of Ailan's Zanpakutō. In other words, this entire space is the embodiment of Ailan's Zanpakutō. Stretching out his hand, blue spiritual power bloomed in Ailan's hand. Projection start. The next moment, a large amount of spiritual power, under the control of Ailan, stretched out the shape of a Zanpakutō, and blue lines spread on the blue Raiko Zanpakutō. Copy the constituent material. Imitation production technology. Shared growth experience. Reproduce the accumulated years. Override and complete many projects. The blue light dissipated, and a Zanpakutō appeared in Ailan's hand. Moreover, the power of this Zanpakutō is exactly the same as his Zanpakutō in the outside world. With a wave of his hand, the Zanpakutō flew several times in the air before being inserted into the highest hill in this space. Under the fiery red light in the sky, it reflected a long shadow. Although the gestation of the Zanpakutō was completed and the first liberation of the Zanpakutō was achieved. Thinking of his Zanpakutō's abilities and what happened to a certain genius boy 200 years later, Ailan finally shook his head. 2 identical Zanpakutō are not allowed in Soul Society. But with his own Zanpakuto abilities, are they more than just two identical swords? If you give me enough time, it won't be difficult to sell Zanpakutos that appear in the entire Soul Society in bulk. If his abilities were known to those nobles, God knows what they would do to him. Before you grow up, it's better not to use your Zanpakuto's true ability in front of outsiders. Therefore, Island is still fishing as always in the 2nd division. If there is a mission, I will go on a mission with my companions. If there is no mission, I will train at the training ground of the 2nd team. After returning to the dormitory at night, I will make the Zanpakutō that I have recorded in the mental world. Elan's Zanpakuto is called Unlimited Sword System. But rather than saying sword making, it is better to say sword making. This space contains countless sword elements. As long as Island has the blueprint of the sword, he can make the sword. Moreover, the sword made by Island will not only have its own abilities, but also its owner's experience in using the sword, which will be copied by Island. In the current general environment of Soul Society, it is impossible for Island to use the abilities of the swords he made, but the combat experience of their owners attached to these swords has also benefited Island a lot. With each additional sword produced, Island will gain decades or even centuries of combat experience from these swords. After absorbing this experience, Ailing uses the 4 Shinigami skills to kill the White Shungi, and then uses a command to the level of tongue smacking increases. In addition, for every additional Zanpakuto forged in Elan's mental space infinite sword system, Elan's spiritual pressure will increase accordingly. Island originally joined the criminal army by dragging the tail of the 2nd division. It can be said that every Shinigami in the criminal army is stronger than Island. The stronger the forged Zanpakuto, the more Elan's spiritual pressure increases. In just a few months, Island's improvement was several times greater than the improvement he had received in the previous 30 years. On this day, Island had just forged a Zanpakuto in his mental world, when he suddenly heard the sound of a gathering. Bang bang bang, bang bang bang. The sound of the hammer and wooden board was struck 3 times in a row, which was a signal for an urgent mission. Without enough time to absorb the experience of this Zanpakuto, Island quickly put on his clothes. Wearing a black death suit and a hood that only exposed his eyes, the whole person seemed to have become a ninja. Walking out of the dormitory, ninjas similar to Island quickly rushed to the meeting point of the criminal army. Chapter 2. The criminal army is a covered and mobile unit of the 2nd division, and it is also the most powerful unit. The tasks they are mainly responsible for are lurking, assassination, execution, secret infiltration, etc. In the course of action, what stands out is efficiency. Therefore, during the operation, the members of the criminal army would not yell like the people of other divisions, but they would be heavy, calm, and uniform, like a meticulous machine. After joining the team, Island quickly found his team leader on the way and followed him. Along with Elan, there were 3 other Shinigami. Feeling that a figure suddenly appeared next to him, Furuta Aoki was shocked. Which squad leader is this looking for? Do you want to cooperate with your own team in a mission? A few seconds after the figure followed Furuta Aoki recognized that this guy was a member of his team, and he had personally recruited him from the Jinnu Spiritual Arts Academy. But what's going on? If Furuta Aoki remembers correctly, during the last mission, Island was no different from the other 3 members of his team. But this time, he actually didn't sense Island's aura until Island approached him. Just relying on the method of hiding, Island is no worse than himself. Has Island made such great progress in such a short period of time? Although he was confused, Furuta Aoki didn't say anything. They are a group of hyenas in the darkness, specializing in dealing with shady things in the Soul Society. As long as they don't involve themselves, who will care about the rest? As the team with the highest casualty rate among the Godi I-13, what they need to do is survive mission after mission. Whoosh! Whoosh! Black figures, one after another, quickly rose and fell in the team building of the 2nd division. Soon, before the emergency assembly of the state order had stopped, there were 5 large divisions of the criminal army, 50 small squads, and 250 people gathered neatly at Noda's training ground. Call out! The sound of breaking wind sounded, and 2 figures suddenly appeared at the front of the second team's training ground. Of these 2 figures, one is the captain of the second division, Yhwach Shihoan, who is wearing a yellow and black vest, black leather pants, and medium-long purple hair. The other one, with slightly messy light yellow hair and hazy eyes, looked like he was not interested in anything. This is the current vice-captain of the second division and the captain of the supervision team that oversees the worm nest, Yhwach. With Island's ability at this time, the sound of breaking wind was only heard after the 2 of them appeared. Everyone, many souls have disappeared in Rukanga for no reason recently. The captain ordered us to find out the reason for the disappearance of the souls as soon as possible. The first team is responsible for exploring the east area of Rukanga. The second team is responsible for exploring the western area. The third brigade is responsible for the southern area. The fourth brigade is responsible for the northern area. The fifth brigade, join me in exploring the Siraidii. Yes. After receiving their respective tasks, everyone quickly turned into afterimages and used Shunpo to rush to the area they were responsible for to explore. Island's team belongs to the 4th Brigade, and their exploration area is the northern district of Rukanga. Each of the 4 blocks of Rukanga is divided into 81 districts. The further down the ranking, the more confusing it becomes. Perhaps because of Island's improvement in strength, this time Furuta Aoki assigned Island to explore the area of Rukanga North 61 and North 62. Compared with the front area near Siraidii, the residences in the blocks behind number 60 have become extremely dilapidated. Moreover, there is no fixed trading place here, and from time to time, people will fight and kill. Whoosh! Island's figure appeared in the shadows in the corner of a room. With all his efforts to hide his presence, the people in the room did not notice that there was an extra person around them. After recording the spiritual pressure of these people, Island continued to travel through North 61 and North 62 districts, recording the spiritual pressure of these people. These wandering souls in ragged clothes and withered bones are obviously not the culprits who caused their souls to disappear for no reason. But they are the souls most suitable for disappearing in the eyes of the culprits. After Island records their spiritual pressure, he can sense their spiritual pressure within a certain range and use this to judge their situation. The soul disappeared for no reason. The most profound thing in Island's memory is the incident of Izansuke's development of Hagyaku. But, clearly, the time is not right now. Or maybe, because this is the real world, Izansuke researched Hagyaku earlier than he knew? Island concentrated and raised his sensing ability to the highest level. While sensing the spiritual pressure around him, he thought about the fundamental reason for this incident in his heart. In the past 30 years in Soul Society, Island has almost sorted out his current point in time. This is about 200 years before the plot of Shinigami unfolds. The captain of the 2nd Division is still Yhwach Shihoan, the captain of the 3rd Division is still Jiro, the captain of the 5th Division is still Hirako Shinji, the captain of the 7th Division is still Aikawa Ratake, and the captain of the 9th Division is still Rokusha. Kanishi, the captain of the 10th Division, is Ishin Shiba, the captain of the 11th Division is Kenpachi Moljo, and Hikifun Kiryu is the captain of the 12th Division. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Island's mind. Before Aizen, Yhwach had successfully created an incomplete Hagyaku. Could it be that this time the soul dissipation incident was caused by Yhwach? Captain Yhwach asked the 2nd Division to investigate Rukanga with such great fanfare, and he and Yhwach were investigating the Siraidii. Is this to wrap things up for Yhwach? Think about it carefully. After more than 100 years, why are the nobles of Central 46 so sure that the aberration experiment was carried out by Yhwach? The only possibility is that Yhwach has a criminal record. Thinking of this, Island paused. That's all, these things are not something that a little shrimp like me can know and deal with. Just do your part. No longer thinking about it, Island continued to record the spiritual pressure of the drifting souls in the two areas he was responsible for, and he continued to act in these two areas in an orderly manner. If he senses the loss of spiritual pressure, Island will definitely send out a signal immediately and escape. I have just gained the ability to be called the strongest, how could I be willing to die here? Fortunately, this situation continued until the end of the mission, and nothing unusual happened in the area Island was responsible for. After that, the second team regained its calm, and Island resumed his practice of going to the training ground during the day to copy other people's Zanpakutō, and after meeting in the dormitory at night, he entered his own mind space and forged the Zanpakutō that was copied during the day. Come out. Moreover, by absorbing the combat experience of these Zanpakutō masters, one's own strength will gradually increase. Chapter 3. Call. Hu-ho. Call. On the second team's training ground, Island held his Zanpakutō and practiced carefully. If someone carefully observes all the people training on this training ground, they will find that Island's training at this moment is very similar to one of these people. This is because the Zanpakutō in Island's hand at the moment is not his own Zanpakutō, but a projection from his own mind space. Holding this Zanpakutō, Island has all the experience of the owner of this Zanpakutō. However, these experiences will only appear in Island's mind when he holds the projected Zanpakutō. For those whose Zanpakutō have been copied by Island, Island is sure to be able to defeat them 50-50 in a short period of time. After all, their opponent is not others, but themselves. However, Island was not satisfied with being evenly matched with others. Instead, he practiced harder and turned the experiences of these people into further qualifications for himself. White hits, swordsmanship, shunpo, kid. Every criminal has his own favorite moves or some practical tricks that have been immersed in the four Shinigami techniques for decades or even hundreds of years. One person's weakness may be another person's strength. Every time he practices for a period of time, Island will sheath his Zanpakutō, secretly activate his Shikai, and project his Zanpakutō into other people's Zanpakutō to practice and master the unique skills of these Zanpakutō owners. When all the experiences of these people are absorbed by Island alone, how strong will Island be? No one knows. Even Island himself is currently confused about his position. However, what Island is sure of is that Captain Gushin, who he thought was very strong in the past, no longer poses any threat to him. And Furuta Aoki is also at the forefront among the squad leaders of the criminal army. It is said that one time after being drunk, Furuta Aoki once said that he almost became the last member of the second division. In each division, in addition to the captain and vice-captain, there are 17 officers who assist in managing the division, ranging from 3 to 20 seats. The last seat is 20 seats. These officials are generally determined based on their strength. After all, if he is not strong enough and is defeated in public, the winner will take the seat of the official. Although the second division has 4 divisions, the strongest among them is the Xingjun. It's not that there are no strong people in other teams, but the strong people in other teams may only be a few team captains and a few team captains. Island guessed that even if Furuta Aoki was suspected of bragging, among the second team, Furuta Aoki's strength could at least rank among the top 50. Being stronger than Furuta Aoki, he might have really touched the chief officer's tail. Bang bang bang, bang bang bang. Just when Island and others were practicing vigorously, the second division's emergency assembly order came to mind again. However, this time not everyone gathered at the training ground. Because hundreds of messenger hell butterflies had already flown over the second division and stopped nearby. Island stretched out his left hand, and a hell butterfly rested on his index finger. When he read the information in the hell butterfly through some means, Island did not dare to neglect and rushed to the noble residence of Siraidii. According to the information in the hell butterfly, it seems that the upper-class noble Kazumioji's family has been attacked, and Shinigami is in urgent need of rescue. Kashomyoji's house. Following Hell Butterfly's guidance, Island rushed to Seattle's house while recalling in his mind whether his dispatch this time matched up with certain events in his memory. If I remember correctly, the Kashomyoji family should be the family that created the Tapi Raya sword, but in the end lost to Nigia Wang Yu by a single move, and failed to be promoted to the Soul King Palace, right? And the Tapi Raya sword is a weapon that can directly give the user powerful power as long as it provides spiritual pressure. Even a person who has completed the Zanpakutō Shikai may not necessarily win against someone who uses the Tapi Raya sword. Although the Tapi Raya sword is not as Shikai Benkai as the Zanpakutō, each Tapi Raya sword also has a unique ability, and anyone can use it as long as it provides spiritual pressure. It can be said that it is a taper Yao knife made of iron and a Shinigami made of flowing water. The Kashimuro family, which owns the taper Yao sword, has always had more than 20 chief officials. How could such a powerful family be invaded? And it also needs the Shinigami of the Godai 13 to rescue them? Are you kidding? However, despite the doubts in his heart, Ai Lin was not ambiguous at all. Boom! Boom boom! As Ailan advanced, he was able to sense the spiritual pressure of the combatants in front. There were dozens of people with extremely chaotic spiritual pressure fighting against a person with slightly burst spiritual pressure. Judging from what Ailan sensed, the party with the larger number of people was at a disadvantage. In addition, there are 4 or 5 battlefields where many people with chaotic spiritual pressure are besieging people with pure spiritual pressure. However, in other battlefields, those with chaotic spiritual pressure have the upper hand. Are these chaotic spiritual pressures from the Kashomyoji family's dead warriors using Tapi Raya swords? The reason why something like the Tapi Raya sword was eliminated by Nigia Oyui's Zanpakutō is that the upper limit of the Tapi Raya sword is lower than the upper limit of the Zanpakutō. Second, the taper Yao knife absorbs spiritual pressure and does not have a safety valve. In battle, those who use the Tapi Raya sword can input their own spiritual pressure into the Tapi Raya sword, making themselves more powerful. However, when the user's spiritual pressure is insufficient, he will be completely swallowed by the taper Yao knife. It takes great courage to use the taper Yao knife. Generally speaking, those who use the Tapi Raya sword in the Kashomyoji family are the death warriors. They have trained themselves. What they pursue is people can die, but the sword cannot be thrown away. If someone dies in the battle, the taper Yao knife they use will be recycled by other dead soldiers. The Kashimoto family's taper Yao sword has never been lost since the beginning of its forging. Whoosh! A dozen Shinigami in ninja costumes also followed Elin. However, soon, these Shinigami were divided into several small teams and rushed to several battlefields. Those who have some strength at their own expense rush to the place where the battle is fiercest. Ailan and the other 3 rushed to one of the small battlefields. Judging from the fluctuations in spiritual pressure, even if the strength of the people fighting over there is stronger than myself, they are not much stronger, and they are still within the range of my ability to deal with them. On the main battlefield, with the strength this man has shown so far, he is at the level of deputy captain. But Ailan suspected that the man under siege had not used his full strength. After all, how could someone who dared to come to Seattle's house to cause trouble have only this little strength? Ailan won't be surprised if the man uses Bankai later. Chapter 4. Whoosh! With the speed of Ailan and the others, they had arrived at a small battlefield in just a few dozen seconds. In this small battlefield, 5 people with strange weapons in their hands were besieging a Shinigami wearing a Death Tyrant costume. The reason why the weapons in the hands of the 5 besieging people were strange was because the hilts of these people's weapons were not sword grids, but something like octopus tentacles. These octopus tentacles seemed to be alive, snaking along the right hands of these people and inserted into their arms. The reason Ailan felt that their spiritual pressure was chaotic was because part of their spiritual pressure came from the swords in their hands. Taper Yao knife. The Shinigami who was besieged by them had a spear in his hand. The weapons of the Shinigami are basically Zanpakutō. However, every Shinigami can blend his soul with Kyanda through Sword Zen to create his own Zanpakutō. By calling the name of the Zanpakutō, Shinigami can gain the power of the Zanpakutō. Usually, the shape and ability of the Zanpakutō will change after liberation. Obviously, this Shinigami is a strong man who can liberate the Zanpakutō. Just look at how strong this Shinigami is just by looking at how every time he waves the spear in his hand, a bolt of lightning shoots out from the tip of the spear, knocking down the dead soldiers who besieged him. However, after these fallen warriors input their spiritual pressure into the Tapi sword in their hands, they would soon stand up again and besiege the Shinigami together. Are they reinforcements from the Godai 13? Please help us to capture this murderer together. Seeing the arrival of Island and others, one of these dead soldiers immediately asked Island and others for help. Although he saw that his opponent was a fellow Shinigami, the mission the criminal army received was to assist the Kazumioji family in suppressing the attackers. Therefore, Ailen and the others had no choice but to pull out their Zanpakutos from their waists and attack the Shinigami. Seeing Ailen and others, the Shinigami's movements obviously paused. However, after Ailen and others joined the battle, he did not hold back. This young man, Shinigami, waved the spear in his hand and separated the attacks from Ailen and others. Feeling the strength of the young Shinigami's spear, Ailen's whole body was shaken, and a strong force came through the spear, causing Ailen's body to retreat involuntarily. Not good. Just after being knocked back, Ailen saw a flash of blue light. At the moment, Ailen didn't care about anything else, and quickly stretched out his free left hand in front of him, with the back of his hand facing outward. Bakut number 8, Rebuke. A transparent light appeared in front of the back of Ailen's hand, and the next moment, the attack came. After repelling the incoming Shinigami, the young Shinigami let out a loud shout, and blue lightning flashed on his spear. Lightning strike! Boom! Following the wave of the young Shinigami, this lightning instantly turned into dozens of thunderbolts and struck everyone present. Boom! Several other people were severely injured in an instant under this lightning. On Ailen's side, because Bakut number 8 was released in advance, it blocked the lightning for a moment before the light curtain was shattered by the lightning. Boom! With the help of Bakut number 8 blocking the lightning, Ailen made his own response again. Projection. Sword and shield. Blue spiritual power condensed in front of Ailen, and a dozen long swords solidified in front of Ailen, forming a shield made of swords. As long as there are weapons in Ailen's infinite sword system, Ailen only needs to consume some spiritual power to project these weapons in the outside world. However, because it is just a projection of the weapon in the unlimited sword system, its level is one level lower than the prototype in the infinite sword system. Bang! The thunder light collided with the sword and shield, breaking a Bakut. The power of the thunder light was attenuated, and the remaining power was completely dissipated after breaking most of Ailen's sword and shield. Following this force, Ailen retreated some distance and stood firmly. Seeing that only Ailen was not knocked down by him, the young Shinigami wanted to attack Ailen. However, the dead warriors of the Kazumioji family recovered quickly with the power of the Tapi sword and joined in attacking him again. Under siege. When Ailen saw this scene, he did not rush to participate in the siege. Instead, he rushed to his teammates, pressed his hands on one of them, and released a blue light. Kaide. Among the many Zanpakutō wielded by Ailen were several of Grandmaster Kaide's executioners. After absorbing their experience, Ailen's Kaide ability at this time was not inferior to others at all. Thank you, brother. I'll treat you to a drink after this mission is over. Okay, brother, go and contain him first, and then I'll go treat the other brothers. Good. Next, Ailen successively treated several other Shinigami and became a field doctor on this small battlefield. The dead soldiers from Seattle's house have a Tapi knife to recover. Colleagues of the 2nd Division Criminal Army were also supported by Kite of Island after they were injured. 10 minutes later, 3 of the dead soldiers of Seattle's family were killed, and 3 of the 5 members of the 2nd squad were seriously injured, and their combat effectiveness was greatly reduced. However, this young man, Shinigami, was almost at the end of his tether. Kill. Another round of attacks. At this time, the spiritual pressure on each of the dead warriors of the Kazumi family turned into substantial light and appeared in the surroundings. The tentacles of the taper Yao sword in their hands had now been eroded to the neck and chest. Location. Even though the strength of the Tapi Raya sword warrior in this state is not as strong as that of the young Shinigami, it is not much different. Soon, the young Shinigami had several wounds on his body. Just when the young Shinigami was about to lose his strength, Island suddenly felt a powerful spiritual pressure coming towards him at a very fast speed. At that moment, Island did not dare to neglect at all, not caring that the 3 seriously injured people had not been cured yet. He kicked a wounded person onto his back, then held one in each hand and quickly moved away from the battlefield. Boom! In the distance, a powerful flame struck, and a powerful explosion blew Island and others away. Puff! Damn it, are you on the main battlefield? You actually let that person rush over. Getting up from the ground, Island felt pain all over his body. He turned around and saw a man walking out of the flames. The giant sword in his hand was slightly curved and there was a red groove in the middle. Wisps of flames burned in the grooves of the giant sword, and the surrounding air wrinkled under the powerful high temperature. At the same time, the spiritual pressure emanating from this man's body made Island feel as if he was in the deep sea. Not to mention moving, even breathing seemed to be a luxury. Captain level, this is definitely captain level spiritual pressure. And this Zanpakutō state is definitely Bankai. Chapter 5. Shinigami. This anime was a very popular anime in Island's previous life. Together with the other 2 animations, it is called the 3 major migrant worker comics. According to the strength displayed by the characters in the anime, they can basically be divided into several levels: Shinigami members in the general team, elite Shinigami members, chief officer, deputy captain, captain, centenary captain, chief captain, and soul king. Team member Shinigami. This is a person who just graduated with honors from the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy and was recruited by the Godai 13 team. Elite Shinigami. This is a Shinigami who has been a Shinigami for more than 10 years. Among the 4 skills of slaying ghosts, they have their own special moves. Sir, this is the elite force in every squad. If you want to become a Shikai, you must at least reach the 5th level of spiritual power and successfully complete the Zanpakutō Shikai. The deputy captain has reached the 3rd level of spirit power, and is the strongest person in the squad besides the captain. Captain, this is considered a big shot in the entire Seridai. Centennial captain, this does not mean that a person who has been in the position of captain for more than 100 years is a century captain, but their Shikai strength is comparable to other ordinary captains' Bankai, not to mention after Bankai, ordinary captains are in front of them, they were no different from other miscellaneous soldiers. Captain, this is Yamamoto Genri Yusai Shigakuni. This level can only be described in 2 words, invincible. The Spirit King who is higher up can no longer be described in terms of strength, but is the cornerstone of the world. Every time you jump up a level, the span of strength becomes larger. For example, there seems to be only 1 level difference between the captain level and the deputy captain level. However, if a captain level expert releases his spiritual pressure with all his strength, a deputy captain level person will find it very difficult to even breathe. Just like Island at this moment, he was like the man in front of Island. The surging spiritual pressure flooded Island like a tide. Concentrating his concentration, Island silently chanted the kid mantra in his heart. After a few seconds, a diamond-shaped light lit up between Island's hands. Bakud number 63, Mirror Gate. The next moment, the light turned into a transparent barriers, protecting Island and the others. The mirror gate is a high-level barrier that can bounce back external attacks. With the protection of this barrier, the pressure of spiritual pressure that Island and others suffered was instantly dissipated. Bear, 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 bear! Raging flames erupted in the groove of the Zanpakutō in the man's hand, and the violent spiritual pressure impacted the barriers laid out by Elan so much that they made a crunching sound, as if the barriers would be crushed by the man's spiritual pressure in the next second. Generally, Elan was also helpless. This barriers is already his strongest defense method at present. But in front of the real captain level, it's really not enough. This guy had just wiped out all the dead soldiers who besieged the young Shinigami with one sword strike. If he and the others were struck with another sword blow, I'm afraid the fate of them would not be much better. Fortunately, the man only glanced at Island and the others, gave the young man Shinigami a few instructions, and then quickly rushed to the next battlefield. The seriously injured Shinigami quickly left the battlefield after the young Shinigami left. Call. Seeing the two people leaving, Island also breathed a sigh of relief. A life was saved. Moreover, I was lucky enough to encounter two powerful Zanpakutō, one of which could reach the level of Bankai. When this mission is over, let's make these two Zanpakutō in the unlimited sword system. In the following time, Island used Kide to treat the three seriously injured people around him without rushing to other battlefields. With that fierce man around, Island would go crazy and die. Moreover, judging from today's emergency edict, it is obvious that there is something dirty in it. Generally, when a noble is attacked, the captain is not the one who comes to the rescue, but at least the deputy captain must take the lead, right? But in this incident, Island and others were actually informed of the mission by Hell Butterfly. At least more than half an hour has passed since the battle began, but Island has not seen a single one of the captains, deputy captains, and even the chief officers of the 2nd Division. Obviously, the only reinforcements informed by Hell Butterfly were the Shinigami members at the bottom. Elan didn't believe that the big shots in the Godai 13 team couldn't sense the captain-level spiritual pressure burst, so why didn't any of them show up? Obviously, this must involve a fight between the big shots at the top. They are just a group of cannon fodder being thrown out. Maybe, it was also made for those nobles. Look, it's not like our Godai 13 team didn't send reinforcements. In order to help your Kazumioji family, we sacrificed so many members. This battle lasted for almost an hour. In the end, after the man who attacked Kazumioji's house made a big fuss, his spiritual pressure suddenly increased and he rushed straight to the Shiridai 1st team building. Then, Island experienced for the first time the tip of the iceberg of the strongest Shinigami strength. The flames that soared into the sky, the powerful spiritual pressure that covered the entire Shiridai, and the captain level that Island had experienced before, there was no comparison at all under this powerful spiritual pressure. In the following days, Island learned about Central 40SIX's handling of this matter through some channels. The Shinigami who attacked Kazumioji's house that day were led by a Shinigami named Kisaragi Taigo. Kisaragi Taiwo knew from some source that the Seattle family had weapons that could enhance their strength, so he led several of his confidants into the Seattle family's hinterland and seized a powerful Tapi Raya sword from the Seattle family. The strength is greatly increased. After that, Kisaragi Taigo, who had greatly increased his strength, directly attacked the first team and launched an attack on Captain Yamamoto. In the end, Kisaragi Taigo was easily defeated by Captain Yamamoto. Although he successfully escaped from the captain, the members of the first team Kisaragi Taiwo's body was soon found somewhere in Rukanga. At this point, the attack on Seattle's house came to an end. However, unlike others, Island had his own opinion on this matter. Ryu Taiwu, others don't know, but Island knows. This man is a disciple of Captain Yamamoto. The reason why he broke into Kazumioji's family was not because he coveted the power of the Taper Yao sword. It was because the Kazumioji family secretly captured many Rukanga souls from Rukanga to test the taper in order to study the Taper Yao sword. Yao knife performance. Because the Kazumyoji family is a superior noble, the Godei 13, as a force that protects the Shiridei, has no law enforcement power against the nobles. However, Kisaragi Taigo, who was born in Rukanga, could not just sit back and watch the Kazumyoji family kill many roving souls, so he sneaked into the Kazumyoji family with several companions who were also born in Rukanga, trying to find evidence that the Kazumyoji family killed roving souls at will. In order to allow Central 46 to initiate an investigation order against the Kazumataji family. Chapter 6. However, Kisaragi Taiwo obviously underestimated the guarding strength of Kazumadeo family. A group of 5 people were discovered immediately after sneaking into Syatolo's house. Under the attack of the dead soldiers, Kisaragi Taiwo may be able to escape, but his companions will become prisoners of Syatolo's house. In order to save his companions, Kisaragi Taiwo had to show his true strength and break into Kazumadeoji's house. However, Kisaragi Taiwo still underestimated the dead soldiers of Syatolo family. Although there is no one strong enough to rival Kisaragi Taiwo in Kazumadeo's family, their family has a more evil taper Yao sword. After killing more than 20 soldiers in the battle, the soldiers of the Syatolo family finally put a powerful Tapi Raya knife into the hands of Ryu Taiwu. The taper Yao sword is a weapon forged by the Kazumuro family using a unique method. It once competed with the Zanpakutō to become Shinigami's standard weapon, but was rejected because its side effects were too evil. When dealing with Kisaragi Taiwu, the Syatolo family also went all out and took out the strongest taper Yao knife in the family. How could this Tapi Raya knife, which had been kept by Kazumadolo's family for hundreds of years, be let go after encountering a spiritual powerhouse like Kisaragi Taiwu? As a result, Ryu Taiwu, who was killing everyone, was defeated. Almost all the spiritual power in his body was sucked dry by this Tapi Raya knife, and he fell to Syatolo's house. In the end, he was controlled by the Tapi Raya sword controlled by the Kazumatalo family, and he attacked the first team and swung the sword at his teacher. Everyone thought that this incident was over. But Alan knew that after this incident, the Syatolo family also began to go downhill. More than 200 years later, the legitimate daughter of the Syatolo family was almost stolen from the entire family by her own retainers. If it weren't for Kisaragi Taigo's son, who changed his name to Amagai Susuke more than 200 years later, and involved Kurosaki Ichigo and others in order to avenge Captain Yamamoto, Kazumyoji's family might really be gone. During this period, Ailan had successfully forged the Zanpakutō of Kisaragi Taiwo and the young Shinigami, greatly improving his strength. Especially Kisaragi Taigo's Zanpakutō, which is a powerful Zanpakutō that has been completed by Bankai. When Eren forged this Zanpakutō, the feedback he gave to himself made Eren's spiritual pressure reach 3rd class. That is the vice-captain level. Boom! Whoosh whoosh! Boom boom boom! Under the fiery red sky, hundreds of long swords rained like rain, blasting into the ground under Ailan's control, bursting out with huge power. As Ailan's strength improved, the shooting speed and power of these long swords increased a lot. At present, it seems that the power of each of these long swords hitting the ground is comparable to head number 30. In other words, Ailan's move was similar to releasing hundreds of number 30 head at the same time. At this moment, the entire Soul Society can safely take over the number of people, no more than 100. Well, this is after Ailan included the hidden guards of the nobles. With my current strength, I am not considered weak among the vice-captains. In the inherent barriers, Ailan looked at the damage caused by his move and nodded secretly in his heart. Then, Ailan turned his gaze to Jiankaiu on the other side. On the sword mound, there are now 15 Zanpakutō. At the center is Ailan's own Zanpakutō, unlimited sword system. The next level down is Kisaragi Taigo's Zanpakutō, which was just made by Ailan. Halfway up the mountainside of Sword Hill, there are still 13 Zanpakutō that are sparsely inserted. Compared to Kisaragi Taigo's Zanpakutō, these 13 Zanpakutō are much inferior. But being able to be inserted into the sword mound also proves that these 13 Zanpakutō are not mortal objects. In fact, this is indeed the case. These 13 Zanpakutō are all Zanpakutō capable of Shikai. However, due to the rules of Soul Society, these Zanpakutos copied by Elin are not allowed to see the light of day. 200 years later, Central 46 demanded that one of the two people with the same Zanpakutō be executed. Then if it is learned that Island possesses multiple Zanpakutō, does one of Island and the owners of these Zanpakutō have to die? When the time comes, do we still need to consider whether those people or Island will die? Even if the people in Central 46 are pig-brained, they will not let a person with unlimited potential like Island grow up. From Kisaragi Taiwu, Aaron knew that if he wanted to grow up quickly, getting close to the captain of the Godai 13th team was the fastest way. After all, every time a captain-level Zanpakutō is made, Elan's spiritual pressure will be greatly improved. For example, this time, Kisaragi Taigo's Zanpakutō forcibly raised Elan's spiritual pressure from breaking through the 4th level to the 3rd level. However, Elan's current identity is that of a member of the criminal army, and he needs to wait in the team building for emergency orders from above whenever nothing happens. If there is an emergency order and they are absent, the worm's nest will not spare them just because they are members of the 2nd division. Otherwise, Aaron would have gone out to Siridi and wandered around, copying all the Shinigami's Zanpakutō he encountered, and then making them in the inherent barriers. If I want to get close to those big shots, my status and strength must be improved. Currently, my strength is about the same as that of the vice-captains of other divisions. What is difficult is how I need to introduce my Zanpakutō abilities to the outside world. Looking at the hundreds of Zanpakutō and his inherent barriers, Ailan lowered his head and pondered. At a certain moment, Ailan's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, my Zanpakuto's ability is unlimited sword control. To be honest, it is actually an unlimited sword. I can't expose the Zanpakutō in Soul Society, but if I can make weapons from other worlds, there will be no problem in using them in Soul Society. Thinking of this, Ailan's heart suddenly became hot. A man remains a boy until he dies. After watching so many anime, who doesn't have a dream of a magic weapon? If you can make all those weapons, even if you can't use them outside, you can still use them in your own barriers. Therefore, Ailan, directly based on the image in his mind, began to collect the elements of the sword inherent in barriers, and made those weapons that were deeply remembered. Identification of creative ideas. Determine the basic skeleton. Countless blue rays of light shine in the inherent barriers and infinite sword system. As time goes by, weapons emerge in Ailan's mental world. If anyone who is familiar with the 2nd dimension sees the weapons in Ailan's barriers at this moment, I am afraid they will scream. Chapter 7. Although these weapons that appear with the blue light are all swords, each one is different. Iron Broken Ye, Tian Sheng Ye, Kanjiun Ye, Fighting Ghosts and Gods, Explosive Broken Ye. Kill with one hit, March of the Dead, Dancing in the Moonlight. The Interpreter, the Chaser of Darkness, the Sword of the Night Sky, the Sword of the Blue Rose, the Sword of the Golden Osmanthus, the Sky-Piercing Sword, the Time-Piercing Sword. Black Sword Knight, Ace, Kusumaikiri, Griffin, First Generation Kaiditsu, Wadu Ikemanji, Black Sword Shusui. Ganjiang, Moi, the Sword in the Stone, Durandal, Spiral Sword, Wugongan, Original Fire, Between Victory. After Ailan's spiritual power was completely consumed, the blue light gradually dissipated, and no more weapons were born. Soon, Ailan produced so many swords that the ability Unlimited Sword Control gave Ailan feedback on his abilities. However, contrary to Ailan's expectation, the feedback he received from the hundreds of weapons from other worlds he made was almost the same as the feedback he received from making those ordinary Shinigami Zanpakutō. Although Ailan's spiritual pressure increased a little, it was not proportional to his ability to make these weapons. Feeling that something was wrong with the feedback he received, Ailan opened his eyes. Then, Island saw that the hundreds of swords he had made this time were sparsely inserted on the planes of the barriers, and none of them was inserted on the sword hill. Island still knows his abilities very well. Among the inherent barriers, sword hill is the only high point. Swords that can be inserted into the sword mound are all very powerful weapons. At the very least, it can achieve Shikai level. Other Zanpakutos that cannot be liberated can only be inserted on the plane and cannot be inserted into the sword mound at all. For example, of the hundreds of Zanpakutō that Eren made before, only a dozen Zanpakutō can be inserted into the sword mound. Now among the hundreds of swords from other worlds made by Island, none of them can be inserted into the sword mound. Is it reasonable? He took a few steps forward and placed his hand on the hilt of one of the swords. Suddenly, Island understood. When Island used to forge Zanpakutō, he successfully copied other people's Zanpakutō from the outside world, and then made these Zanpakutō in his own Zanpakuto's inherent barriers unlimited sword system. In this way, the Zanpakutō made by Island is naturally a complete Zanpakutō. Identification of creative ideas. Determine the basic skeleton. Copy the constituent material. Imitation production technology. Shared growth experience. Reproduce the accumulated years. 6 production steps, not one is missing. The weapons that Island made based on the memories in his mind only had 2 steps, identifying the creation concept and conceiving the basic skeleton. There is nothing behind the composition materials, production technology, growth experience, and accumulated years. Therefore, the weapons from other worlds made by Island now only have their functions but no soul. Therefore, Island put his hand on the hilt of the sword and did not gain the experience of a master of these weapons. No wonder this time he exhausted his spiritual power to make hundreds of swords and got such a low improvement. A sword of this quality is similar to other Zanpakutō copied by Island. Sword has a certain experience. Clang. Pulling out the knife in his hand, Island waved it a few times and shook his head. These swords only have their shape but no function. In the following time, Island would spend the rest of his time immersed in his own barriers, except when he had tasks to do, and study how to forge the swords from other worlds in his mind. The inherent barriers of unlimited sword system contain all the elements of sword. Therefore, as long as Island has the sword template, he can make a sword with 100% accuracy. The sword Island wants to make now only has the memory in his mind. Then, based on the memory in his mind, he collects the elements suitable for this sword to make a new sword. This is a big project. Even Island didn't know how long it would take him to successfully make a complete sword. Therefore, what he chose was his entry into the second dimension. Inuyasha. After countless attempts, Island finally made great progress. Blue light condensed in Island's hand, and blue lines outlined the shape of the weapon. Buzz. At this time, a ray of fire suddenly appeared in the Kisaragi Taiwa's Zanpakutō that was made by Island on the sword mound. The fire turned into a stream of light and directly connected with the sword being forged in Island's hand. When the blue light dissipated, a slightly broken sword with large and small jagged gaps on the blade appeared in Island's hand. Iron broken teeth. Success. When the sword was completely solidified, Island's eyes lit up. Different from other inferior products, the current one has memory in it. Therefore, Island ignored his current consumption and immersed his mind in the memory of this iron broken tooth. After a long time, Island opened his eyes and let out a satisfied but not so satisfied sigh. I am satisfied because this iron broken tooth really contains the experience of a certain half-demon. The reason why I say I'm not satisfied is because this iron broken tooth is only a semi-finished product. Among the experiences, in addition to enlargement, there is only one secret wind injury. There are no other blasting styles, Vajra spear breaking, or underworld Zangetsu slash. However, in terms of form, although this iron broken tooth does not yet have the red and dragon scale form, it has a flame form. This is because, according to Island's memory, Tetsuya has a flame form, so when forging Tetsuya, there was a flame in the Zanpakutō of Kisaragi Taiwu on the sword mound. The power poured into it, complementing Tai Suiya's flame form. When Ailan realized all this, he was overjoyed. It turns out that the weapons you make will actually help you when you make new weapons. In this way, if you copy more Zanpakutō, will it be much easier when you make weapons from other worlds in the future? For example, if you copy Sui Feng's Suzumebachi, will it still be difficult to make the level 1 killer Murasame? Chapter 8. If Sodi no Shirayuki or Haranmara were copied, how difficult would it be to make the Taigu demonic essence? Can the Black Sword Knight, which was created by copying Kurosaki Ichigo's Zangetsu and Zaraki Kenpachi's Noze, have the power to cut mountains apart? After copying Hisagomaru and making natural teeth, what effect will it have? Thinking of this, Ailan felt hot in his heart. Moreover, Aaron, who had already made Tetsuya, no longer minded leaking his Zanpakuto's abilities. As long as no other Zanpakuto in Shinigami appears in his hand, what if everyone knows that his ability is sword making? After he copies more Zanpakuto and improves his strength to the point where he surpasses Yamamoto and surpasses the monk, what if he reveals that he can make the same Zanpakuto? After exiting the mind space, Ailan had a beautiful sleep. The next day, Ailan got up, tidied himself up, and walked to the team room of the captain of the 2nd Division. The Godi I-13 is essentially a violent organization. The principle is to put the strong on top and the weak on the bottom. Even if you are the captain, if you can defeat him in front of more than 200 team members, you can take his place. The captain is the strongest person in a squad. If Ailan wants to get the freedom to travel, all he needs to do is show off his strength. Challenging Ziguan, defeating Ziguan, and becoming Ziguan are the most direct and effective means. During this time, Ailan had also found the target he needed to challenge. That was Nozomi Omida, the vice-captain of the 2nd Division and the head of the lower-level noble Omida family. Omida's Hijin's strength is worthy of his seat. Just like the captain's challenge, if you want to challenge the chairman, enough people need to be present, and it must be witnessed by the captain before it will take effect. Along the way, Ailan successfully arrived at the captain's room of the 2nd Division. However, contrary to Ailan's expectation, in the team room of the 2nd team, there was only a little girl with short hair who looked to be only 11 or 12 years old. She was carefully flipping through the files and writing something down in each file from time to time. Although this was the first time for Ailan to meet this little girl, he was very familiar with this person. The next head of the lower noble family, Sui Feng, succeeded Yhwach as the captain of the 2nd Division after Yhwach and Urahara Kisuk defected to Soul Society. Of course, there is no Sui Feng who has succeeded the position of head of the Feng family, and is not called Sui Feng yet. Instead, it's called Feng Shaoling. If you have any documents, put them here first. I'll look at them after I finish processing them. Hearing Ailan's footsteps, Feng Shaoling thought someone was bringing the team's files, so she said hello casually and continued to work on the files. Every squad has something that needs to be handled by the captain personally every day. But unfortunately, Shifunji Yuan Yhwach is not that willing to handle team affairs. Before Hesuiya, Urahara Kisuk basically handled the team affairs of the 2nd team for Yhwach. After Hesuiya came to Yhwach, Urahara Kisuk was freed from team duties. Hesuiya is very happy to be able to help Lord Yhwach. But whenever I think about how Yhwach-sama and that timid man often stay together because of his help, I feel inexplicably depressed. She didn't want to be angry with Master Yhwach, so she had to vent all her anger on that man. Just wait, after I finish all these team affairs, I will check on that man right away. I will never let Master Yhwach stay with that kind of man. You must let Lord Yhwach see the true face of that man as soon as possible, otherwise, Lord Yhwach will definitely be led astray by that man. Thinking of this, the movements in Feng Shaoling's hands became faster. However, what surprised Hyōsube was, what happened to the Shinigami who delivered the squad file today? Why haven't you put the file down and left after so long? Did he want to delay his time to deal with team affairs? Thinking that she might have to shorten her time with Yhwach-sama today because she was dealing with the files, Hyōsube's face suddenly turned ugly. Raising her head, Feng Xiaoling said coldly, "Let me tell you, what I just said." Ah! Before she finished speaking, Feng Xiaoling realized that she seemed to have recognized the wrong person. The man in front of him is not the one who sent the dossier in the past. Moreover, although this man was wearing the uniform of the 2nd Division, there was no image of this man in Hyōsube's mind. Although she felt embarrassed, Feng Xiaoling quickly adjusted her emotions, straightened her sitting posture, and asked Ailan, "Who are you?" "Hello, I am Ailan from the Criminal Army number 120,358. I want to challenge the Deputy Captain Omida Nozomi. How do I register?" "That's right, Ailan came here to register challenge information. After all, the challenges of the chairperson, vice captain, and captain all require the presence of certain team members for the challenge results to be effective. Generally speaking, for a chief officer's challenge, the team captain will make an announcement to the entire team after coordinating the date of the challenge with both challengers. At that time, interested team members can come to watch the game and become witnesses of the challenge. If the number of spectators on the challenge day is not up to standard, the captain will temporarily recruit some people to watch the match. However, generally speaking, every division chief's challenge will not lack audiences. After all, this is also a rare entertainment for everyone, and as a member of the same team, understanding the strength of the strong people in your own team will also help you make some choices when performing tasks in the future." "What? You are the Ailan who has become very famous recently?" Hearing Ailan's self-introduction, Feng Xiaoling glanced at Ailan in surprise. "You know, as a covered mobile unit, the 2nd Division is most famous for its stealth, assassination, and execution. However, in this squad that was based on assassination, a strange person like Ailan actually appeared. Well, to the people in the 2nd Division, Ailan is indeed a weirdo. Because Ailan is famous not for his strength, but for his superb kide. During the attack on Xiaodalo's home a year ago, about 50 criminal troops received a support mission. Among them, 7 people died, and the remaining more than 40 people also suffered injuries of varying severity. At that time, it was Ailan who used his powerful kide to rescue more than a dozen seriously injured people from near death. When the wounded were sent to the 4th Division later, Anohana Retsu, the captain of the 4th Division, once said that the level of kide, the person who treated these people, was not inferior to the deputy captain Yamada Sanashuk even if he was in the 4th Division. Chapter 9. Captain Anohana also said that without Ailan's kide, at least a dozen more people would have died in that mission of the 2nd Division. At that time, Captain Anohana smiled and told Yhwach, who came to visit the team members, that if Ailan wanted to go to the 4th team, she could make the decision and let Ailan take the 3rd seat in the 4th team. Given time, it is not impossible to surpass Yamada Sanashuk and become the deputy captain of the 4th Division. However, it seems that because this guy was too low-key during that time, and Master Yhwach was so careless, he forgot about this guy after he came back without finding him. Hyōsube never expected that just how long had passed, this guy did not become the 3rd member of the 4th Division, but wanted to challenge Omida Nozomi of the 2nd Division to become the vice-captain of the 2nd Division. However, can this guy defeat Omida Nozomi? Regarding this point, Feng Xiaoling feels a little hung up. Omida Shinigami is no ordinary Shinigami. He once followed the previous head of the Shihoin family, Yhwach-sama's father, Senhai Shihoin, and served as the deputy captain of the 2nd Division for more than 100 years. In other words, she and Yhwach-sama were childhood sweethearts. Bah, it was that man who kept pestering Yhwach-sama, so he was not a childhood sweetheart. However, no matter how much Feng Xiaoling dislikes that lazy man, she still has to admit that man's talent. No matter how talented a person is, it will take at least 10 years to complete the training of Zanpakutō Bankai. But, that man. Thinking of this, Feng Xiaoling shook her head and threw the man out of her mind. Member Ailan, are you sure you want to challenge Vice Captain Omida? Maybe you don't know, Omida Nozomi has been the Vice Captain of the 2nd Division for almost 200 years. Feng Xiaoling looked at the application for the Chief Officer challenge submitted by Ailan and kindly gave some advice. Ailan is a talent, especially Kaide. After so many years, Hyōsube has never heard that Lord Unohana of the 4th Division took the initiative to invite others to join the 4th Division, and also gave the 3rd officer's position. Location. Ailan is still the first. Even if such a talent cannot stay in the 2nd team in the end, Hyōsube doesn't want him to have a bad impression on the 2nd team. Being able to become the captain of the 2nd team within a short period of time after Yhwach left, Hyōsube is not bad in terms of talent and overall perspective. Ah! Thank you. The reminder to little Sui Feng was unexpected by Ailan. However, Ailan still accepted the kindness of little Sui Feng. At that moment, Ailan smiled and nodded at Feng Xiaoling and said, however, since I have chosen to challenge Lord Omida, I am somewhat confident. Speaking of this, Ailan also deliberately patted the Zanpakutō on his waist. Well, since you are so confident, I will tell Lord Yhwach the news and let Lord Yhwach arrange your challenge. Seeing Ailan like this, Feng Xiaoling frowned and stopped trying to persuade her. Have you completed the liberation of the Zanpakutō? No wonder he is so confident. But forget it, maybe his Zanpakutō is very powerful? Well, I have recorded your breath. If Master Yhwach arranges it, I will let the Hell Butterfly inform you. Thank you, Sui Feng. After getting the result he wanted, Ailan smiled and nodded his thanks to Feng Xiaoling before leaving the captain's room. However, his last words made Feng Xiaoling stunned. Sui Feng? Where did he know this name? As the next head of the lower-level noble Feng family, Feng Xiaoling naturally has her own family name. However, that would have to wait until she truly became the head of the Feng family before she could officially use it. Currently, only Master Yhwach knows this name and often calls her by this name. Ailan is just a very ordinary Shinigami, how could he possibly know this name? After thinking about it, Feng Xiaoling still didn't understand how her other name was leaked. She could only shake her head and continue to deal with team affairs. At the same time, she did not forget to immediately send the news that Aaron wanted to challenge the Vice Captain Omida Nozomi through the Hell Butterfly to Lord Yhwach. Well, Hyōsube can swear that she definitely didn't mean to disturb Yhwach-sama and the man's alone time, but as a member of the 2nd Division, she has the obligation to pass on some matters that she can't handle to Yhwach-sama as soon as possible, so that he can Lord Yhwach took care of it himself. As a covered mobile unit, confidentiality is the first priority for the 2nd Division. Therefore, the management of the 2nd Division is much stricter than that of other divisions. Moreover, the team members must be on call at any time. Other divisions can meet up for drinks and parties. People in the 2nd Division, especially Xingjun, really have no other entertainment activities except being able to leave the team building when they go on missions. The Chief's challenge is a rare way for everyone to relax. No, when the news spread that Ailan wanted to challenge the Vice Captain Omida Nozomi, there was almost no peace in Ailan's dormitory. Especially Ailan's former team leader Furuta Aoki, who came 3 times a day. No, Ailan had just sent away a colleague who had been treated by him, and Furuta Aoki came again. Ha 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 ha, Ailan, I knew you had a lot of potential. Under Ailan's speechless gaze, Furuta Aoki knocked Ailan away from the door and led several of his friends into Ailan's dormitory. Quick, quick, Ailan, let me introduce you. This is Fui Yuancheng, the captain of the 2nd team of the 5th team, lighting team. This is Deju and Xiaoyanagi Xiangping, members of the 2nd team. Hello, Captain Fuiyuan, hello Daiju, and hello Xialihuduishi. After everyone became familiar with each other, Gushin Aoki put his hand on Fuiyuan's shoulder and muttered, Fuiyuan, it took a lot of effort for me to have such a good seedling. If Ailan really goes to your place then, come on, Fuiyuan, you have to help me. Hearing Furuta Aoki's words, Ailan paused slightly. Furuta Aoki, this is paving the way for himself. Think about the people Furuta Aoki brought during this period, including those from the supervision team, the police patrol team, and the intelligence team. Now, Fuiyuan City belongs to the lighting team. In the second division, there are a total of 5 divisions, except for the criminal army. Furuta Aoki has invited all of them. Ailan challenges the third seat Omida Nozomi. If he wins, he will become one of the few big names in the second team. But if it fails, if you want to kill a criminal soldier quietly, there aren't many ways. Obviously, Furuta Aoki was afraid that Ailan would be resented after he failed in the challenge, so he used his connections early, hoping that Ailan would have a good place to go. Chapter 10. Among the second division, only the criminal army is a high-risk position. The supervision team is the guard who looks after the worm nest. Under normal circumstances, there is no need to take action. Even if he takes action, the enemies he faces are prisoners without Zanpakutō. The police patrol team is a scout unit that monitors the movements of the other 12 divisions. The other 12 divisions are all aware of their existence, and no one will find it uncomfortable to attack these scouts. The intelligence team is responsible for processing and classifying all kinds of information from Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the real world, and storing this information into the Great Spirit Book Corridor. The lighting team is a unit responsible for delivering messages and delivering orders issued by Central 46 or the Commander-in-Chief to specific groups of people. They are both in the second division. As long as Ailan is transferred out of the criminal army, no matter which division he goes to, his safety will be guaranteed. After understanding Furuta Aoki's good intentions, Ailan's figure froze. Captain Furuta. Ailan still remembers that he had just graduated from the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy, and his talent was mediocre, but he was still a little short of joining the Godai 13th team. That is to say, Furuta Aoki, who was recruited by the second team, saw that his shunpo was good, so he made an exception and included Ailan in the second team. In the next 30 years, it was under the care of Furuta Aoki that Ailan was able to survive from a rookie to one mission after another. Now, Ailan's strength has greatly increased, surpassing Furuta Aoki, but Furuta Aoki is still using his own way to solve his crisis for Ailan. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and a hint of warmth appeared in Ailan's eyes. In this fed-up world, there are still people who are kind to me. Oh? Interesting. In an empty sandy field, a black hell butterfly rested on the index finger of Shifunji Yuan Yhwach. When Yhwach finished reading the information in the hell butterfly, he grinned. Hey, Urahara, how long do you have? It's coming soon, it'll be fine in 3 days at most. Okay, I'll send a message back to little Suifeng first, and we'll go back in 3 days. 3 days later, a very embarrassed Urahara Kisuk appeared in front of Yhwach, placing a wooden golem target in front of Yhwach. It's finally finished. It's really difficult to make this thing. Yhwach of Shifunji Yuan stepped forward, flicked the human-shaped wooden rake a few times with his fingers doubtfully, and said doubtfully, Urahara, can this thing really make a person become a bankai in 3 days? Urahara Kisuk and Shifon Yhwach are childhood sweethearts who grew up together. In Yhwach's mind, as long as Urahara Kisuk wants, there is nothing he can't do. However, what Urahara Kisuk made this time was indeed beyond her understanding. In Yhwach's opinion, the most genius person in Soul Society is Urahara Kisuk. But even for Urahara Kisuk to complete the training of Bankai, it took nearly 10 years. This has already broken the Soul Society's record. However, this latest thing made by Yhwach Kisuk can actually allow people to complete Bankai training in 3 days. If this spreads out, it will definitely cause a major earthquake in Seoul society. Well, the most important step in Bankai's training is to allow the body of his Zanpakutō to materialize, and then to surrender the materialized Zanpakutō before it can be completed. But throughout the 2000 years of Seoul society's history, there are very few people who have the talent to accomplish this step. Most Shinigami don't have enough spiritual pressure to materialize their Zanpakutō. Chapter 11. This thing I created is called the transformation body. As long as Shinigami inserts his Zanpakutō into Tenshin's body, this thing. Knocking on the human-shaped target sign on the ground, Yhwach Kisuk couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth. Being able to make something like this is indeed enough to make Yhwach Kisuk proud. This thing can replace Shinigami and manifest Shinigami's Zanpakutō. After listening to Yhwach Kisuk's words, Yhwach touched his chin and nodded in agreement. Indeed, many vice-captains actually have considerable strength, but their spiritual pressure is not enough to manifest their Zanpakutō, so they have never been able to complete Bankai. If this Zanshinki can complete the manifestation of the Zanpakutō instead of Shinigami, there will be at least half as many people in Seoul society who can complete Bankai training. No, not that much. Yhwach Kisuk shook his head. Although most Shinigami are stuck at the stage of manifesting the Zanpakutō, making the Zanpakutō surrender is no less difficult than manifesting the Zanpakutō. Even if those people successfully manifest their Zanpakutō using their Zanshin body, 2 or 3 out of 10 people can surrender their Zanpakutō and cultivate into Bankai, which is considered powerful. And speaking of this, Yhwach Kisuk touched his hair and said with a naive smile, my Zanshin body does not use Shinigami's own spiritual pressure to manifest the Zanpakutō. It is best to successfully make the Zanpakutō surrender within 3 days. After 3 days, the manifested Zanpakutō will become violent due to the incompatibility between spiritual pressure and Shinigami. At that time, hearing Yhwach Kisuk's last words, Yhwach crossed his arms, Zanpakutō fury? Yhwach, are you still a failure? The materialized Zanpakutō becomes violent, which is basically the biggest disaster for Shinigami. Most of the Shinigami's strength, 80% or more of their strength, lies in their Zanpakutō. Shinigami can call the Zanpakutō's name to free his Zanpakutō. The first stage of liberation can increase Shinigami's own spiritual pressure by 3 to 5 times, and he can use the Zanpakutō's abilities. Fortunately for the captains who have completed Bankai training, their compatibility with their Zanpakutō has reached an extremely high level, and they can directly Shikai without calling the Zanpakutō's name. But for those who have not yet completed Bankai training, if their own embodied Zanpakutō goes berserk and does not respond to them, they will not even be able to liberate their Zanpakutō. In other words, if a Shinigami who uses the Tenshin body to practice Bankai cannot complete the Bankai training within 3 days, he will not even be able to use his own Shikai in the future. What Yhwach is confused about is that with Yhwach Kisuk's ability, it is impossible to make a prop with such great side effects. If the practicality of the divine transformation body without side effects is 100, then the practicality of the divine transformation body with this side effect is not even 1. Not everyone has the courage to risk everything in the future to win this final leap. Moreover, even if they have the courage, they may not have enough strength to make the Zanpakutō surrender within 3 days. In this way, a paradox is formed. Those who can make the embodied Zanpakutō surrender within 3 days can complete the manifestation of the Zanpakutō without using the Zanshin body at all, and gradually strengthen themselves, conquer their own Zanpakutō, and become Bankai. And for those who cannot make the Zanpakutō surrender within 3 days, if they use the Zanshin body, they will only lose their strength in the end, and even Shikai can't do it. In other words, this transformation body can only be used by geniuses who have great potential but don't want to waste time practicing Bankai. Oh, you saw through it, Yhwach. After making a playful face at Yhwach, Yhwach Kisuk said seriously, I did it on purpose. As a researcher, Yhwach Kisuk was born to pursue the unknown. However, as he learned more and more, he became more and more confused. This period was also the most confusing period for Yhwach Kisuk. With this mentality, some of the things Yhwach Kisuk invented and produced were all very useful, but actually useless, such as the Shinken body. As Yhwach Kisuk's childhood sweetheart, Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach naturally knows Yhwach Kisuk's current state. However, she didn't say anything, she just stayed by Yhwach Kisuk's side quietly. Let's go Yhwach-san, if I remember correctly, the vice-captain's challenge is today, right? Well, let's go and see if this little guy has the strength to match his own courage. Hundreds of people had gathered at the second team's training ground. After these 3 days of publicity, everyone knows that Ailen, who has become famous in the second team in recent times, today challenged the vice-captain Omida Nozomi. Speaking of which, a challenge from the chief officer of the second division occurs every few years, but a challenge from the vice-captain has not happened for nearly 200 years. This is not only the trust that the Shifunji-Yuan family has in the Omida family, but also the strength of Omida Nozomi, who can overwhelm most people. It can be said that in the entire second team, except for Yhwach and Yhwach Kisuk, Omida is the strongest. Standing in the center of the training ground, Ailen closed his eyes and concentrated. If the vice-captain of the second team was Yhwach Kisuk, then he would not have the intention to challenge at all. After all, there may be no one in this world who knows that man better than him. However, Ailen didn't think he would lose if it was just Omida. Hey, is it you, the little one, who wants to challenge me? Just as Ailen closed his eyes to rest, a powerful voice sounded behind Ailen. Opening his eyes, Ailen felt like he was enveloped by a huge shadow. Ailen raised his head slightly and saw this man who was several heights taller than him. The brown nose of the aircraft, the height of nearly 3 meters, and the huge body that is fatter than the average person give people a strong pressure. The current vice-captain of the second division Omida Nozomi. Ah, it's me. I'll ask Vice-Captain Omida for advice later. Ha 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 ha, little guy, you are good, courageous. Contrary to Ailen's expectation, when facing himself who challenged him and wanted to obtain the position of his vice-captain, Omida Zizhigen did not speak harshly, but happily patted Ailen on the shoulder. As your seniors, the happiest thing is to see you juniors surpass us. Little guy, I admire you. After this battle, no matter whether you win or lose, I will treat you to a drink. After finishing speaking, Omida Zizhigen laughed and crossed Ailen and walked towards the opposite side of Ailen. However, after meeting Ailen, Omida suddenly had a serious expression on her face. This kid is not simple. Chapter 12. Omida Nozomi is the head of the lower-level noble Omida family. At the beginning of the establishment of Seireidai, the Omida family was just an ordinary family. However, after Omida Zizhigen was born, Omida's family ushered in great changes. One, of course, is that Omida Nozomi has considerable talent and graduated from Jinnu Spiritual Arts Academy with honors. Secondly, after joining the second division, Omida Nozomi directly devoted his family's efforts to join the Shifunjin family, used the Omida family's hundreds of years of business channels to help the Shifunjin family, and became a retainer of the Shifunjin family. Under the operation of Shifunji-Yuan Kiani, the Omida family became a lower-level noble. Thirdly, Omida Nozomi's personal strength has grown rapidly. In less than 100 years, he has become the right-hand man of Shifunjin Senhai and the vice-captain of the second division. After Yhwach Shihoan resigned, Omida continued to work for Yhwach Shihoan. Even though Yhwach Kisuk's strength surpassed Omida's, Yhwach Shifunjin did not replace Omida's position as vice-captain. Of course, there is also part of the reason why Yhwach Kisuk is unwilling. However, the position of vice-captain for nearly 200 years has not made Omida Zizhigen inflated. Rather, these 200 years have allowed Omida to fully understand his own limits. So far, Omida Nozomi has no idea about the manifestation of the Zanpakutō. 100 years ago, his Ryotsu also stopped growing, leaving Bankai hopeless. It is estimated that in a few decades, he will retire. Before that, Omida wanted to pave the way for his son. This little guy named Ailin is young. I heard he is not yet 40 years old, but he already has quite a reputation and is a worthy target for his investment. After knowing that Ailin wanted to challenge him, Omida valued Eren even more. If you challenge the vice-captain, except for a fool, you have completed the first stage of liberation of the Zanpakutō, and the Zanpakutō's ability is still very strong. If the ability of the Zanpakutō is not strong, even the official position will be suspended. If before meeting Ailin, Omida Zizhigen still had the idea of leaving a hand to give Ailin a decent idea, then after meeting Ailin, Omida Zizhigen felt that if she didn't try her best, it would be dishonorable. I'm afraid I will become myself. Having been a Shinigami for more than 300 years, Omida has not made much progress, but her eyesight is not bad. In Ailin's body, Omida Nozomi actually faintly felt a bit of the temperament of Senhai-sama, Yurayuaki-sama, and the third one named Yuraharakisuke. And those three people. God, is this Ailin right? Thinking of this, Omida almost softened her steps forward. However, after all, he is a person who is used to seeing big scenes, so Omida quickly adjusted his mentality. After walking 10 meters in front of Ailin, Omida turned around and crossed her arms, quietly waiting for the arrival of Captain Yurayuaki with Ailin. Everyone else in the training ground, after seeing Omida Nozomi's arrival, stopped talking and stared at the two people quietly. Didn't make everyone wait any longer. After a gust of wind blew, the figures of Shifunjyu Yurayuaki and Yuraharakisuke appeared between Ailin and Omida Nozomi. Lord Yurayuaki! Lord Yurayuaki! Everyone, including Eren, bowed to Shifunjin Yurayuaki. Ha ha ha, it seems we are not late. After laughing a few times with his hands on his hips, Yurayuaki looked at Eren and Omida Nozomi with a serious look. Eren, let me confirm with you again, do you want to continue the challenge? Lord Yurayuaki, I choose to challenge. Very well, then good luck to you. I announce that the challenge between second team member Eren and Vice-Captain Omida Nozomi will begin now. Call out. After saying these words, the figures of Shifunjyu Yurayuaki and Yuraharakisuke flickered and teleported outside the training ground, leaving the open space to Eren and Omida Nozomi. Vice-Captain Omida, please advise. As a challenger, Ailin took the lead in drawing out his Zanpakutō. Hey! After seeing Ailin's Zanpakutō, Omida's face became even more serious. He did not dare to be careless and immediately pulled out his Zanpakutō. Shinigami's Zanpakutō has various abilities, but before liberation, everyone's Zanpakutō forms were similar. However, the Zanpakutō in Ailin's hand actually gave people an old and broken feeling. The worn blade, the chipped blade. If it weren't for this serious battle, everyone would probably laugh at Ailin's Zanpakutō. But in such a battle scene, the people in the second division would not underestimate Ailin, thinking that Ailin's Zanpakutō was broken. The greater possibility is that Ailin's Zanpakutō has some special ability, which is why its appearance is so broken. Bring it on! Ha! Omida Zizhigen shouted, and his majestic spiritual power exploded, and white spiritual power flames appeared all over his body. Hey! It's strange, the battle has just begun, and Vice-Captain Omida actually pays so much attention to it. Vice-Captain Omida actually used all his strength from the beginning. Seeing Omida's appearance, the Shinigami watching the battle were extremely shocked. The spiritual power is coming out of the body, which means that except for not liberating the Zanpakutō, Omida Nozomi is ready to try her best. Boom! Like Omida Marekyo, Ailin also exploded with his own spiritual pressure. This. I really can't believe that Ailin's spiritual pressure is no weaker than that of Vice-Captain Omida. Island's outburst was beyond everyone's expectations. After Ailan became famous, everyone knew that it had only been 30 years since Ailan joined the 2nd Division. In just 50 years, Ailan has acquired a 6th-level spiritual power comparable to that of Vice Captain Omida. This talent is so high that few people can match it. Call out! The next moment, in everyone's eyes, Ailan and Omida disappeared. Boom! Clang! 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 There was a roar, sparks flew around the training ground, and then the sound of weapons clashing reached everyone's ears. So fast! Among the people watching the battle, some people couldn't help but exclaimed. Those who can join the 2nd team may be weaker in other aspects, but Shunpo will definitely not be bad. However, during the battle between Eren and Omida Nozomi, many of them could not even see the two of them. Whether it is Ailan or Omida, their Shunpo attainments far exceed those of the others. They could only catch Ailan and Omida Nozomi through the sparks on the training ground and the clash of Zanpakutō. However, when their eyes looked at the place where the sparks splashed, the two figures had already appeared on the other side. Chapter 13. Outside the training ground, both Yhwach and Yura were a little surprised. Although they knew that Ailan had the courage to challenge Vice Captain Omida, they had certain confidence in their own strength. However, based on Ailan's performance over the years, they speculated that what gave Ailan confidence was probably Ailan's Zanpakutō ability. They never expected that in the duel between Shunpo and swordsmanship before both sides had liberated the Zanpakutō, Eren would actually be on par with Omida Nozomi? No, not evenly matched. Shifunji Yuan Yhwach and Yura looked at each other, and both saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Judging from the strength of Yhwach and Yura, it can be seen that the apparently equal match is that Ailan's achievements in swordsmanship and Shunpo are even higher than Omida's. Damn it, what kind of monster is this? Clang! Omida crossed his sword, collided with Ailan, and then Shunpo escaped. But the next moment, Ailan's figure appeared in front of him, forcing him to draw his sword again. Although Omida Nozomi is huge, being able to become the vice captain of the 2nd team for nearly 200 years shows how strong Omida Nozomi's Shunpo is. However, at this time, Omida Zizhijin felt that he was restrained in every way during the battle with Ailan. Whether it's Shunpo or swordsmanship, he can only passively respond to the attack from Ailan. This feeling reminded Omida Nozomi of the time when she fought with Captain Shifunji Yuan Senhai more than 100 years ago. At that time, I was also so powerless. Does this Ailan really have the same power as Master Kyunri? Bang! However, within just a few minutes, Omida felt herself dripping with cold sweat. Compared with Omida Zizhijin, Ailan is much more relaxed. After fully absorbing Kisaragi Taiwa's experience, Ailan's 4 Shinigami skills have been greatly improved. Especially swordsmanship. You know, Kisaragi Taigo is a disciple of Captain Yamamoto. Under the guidance of Captain Yamamoto, his swordsmanship will naturally be good. It can be said that Ailan's swordsmanship at this time is not weak even among captains. The gap between captain level and below captain level is as big as a chasm. Of course, Ailan's spiritual pressure is only at level 6 now, which is about 10 times worse than captain level. A dimension reduction attack under a high-rise building, with the same spiritual pressure, Omida Zizhijin had no power to fight back. However, if Ailan really hit him like that, he would undoubtedly press Vice Captain Omida's face to the ground and rub it. At that time, everyone in the 2nd team, including Shifunji Yuan Yhwach, may not look good. After all, before this, Omida Nozomi was the vice captain of the 2nd division for nearly 200 years, and to a certain extent, he represented part of the face of the 2nd division. Although Ailan also belongs to the 2nd division, his rise has been short-lived and has not yet been recognized by most of his colleagues. If you act too forcefully, you may be offended by everyone, overtly or covertly. Therefore, although it was Ailan who actually suppressed Omida Nozomi, what appeared in everyone's eyes was that Eren and Omida Nozomi's vice-captain met each other and were inextricably linked to each other. Clang! The figures of Island and Omida Nozomi appeared in the center of the training ground. The figures of the two figures, one large and one small, formed a sharp contrast. Crack, click, click. The broken Zanpakutō and the intact Zanpakutō struggled with each other. After a few seconds, the spiritual power on the swords burst out, knocking them back. Ho-ho! Hey, hey! Omida's Hijin gasped for air and stared at Island tightly. How long has it been since you had such a fierce battle? Thinking of this, Omida Nozomi's expression became tense, and her majestic spiritual pressure was synchronized with the Zanpakutō in her hand. Blast him to pieces, Juguin! As Omida Nozomi shouted, the Zanpakutō in his hand suddenly expanded and turned into a mace more than 3 meters long. Boom! After the Zanpakutō Shikai, Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure increased 5 times. For Shinigami, especially Shinigami who has completed the liberation of the Zanpakutō, at least 80% of his strength lies in the Zanpakutō. The Zanpakuto's Shikai can increase the Shinigami's spiritual pressure by 3 to 5 times. The Zanpakuto's Bankai can increase Shinigami's spiritual pressure by 5 to 10 times. Although Omida Nozomi has not touched the edge of Bankai for more than 200 years, he has also developed the power of Zanpakuto Shikai to the extreme, and the increase in his own spiritual pressure has reached 5 times the strongest Shikai. This is Omida Nozomi's strongest state. In his normal state, he is no match for Eren, but after freeing his Zanpakutō, Omida is confident that among the vice-captains, there are few who can beat him. Island has only been in the 2nd division for 30 years, and seeing that his spiritual pressure is about the same as his own, Bankai must have not yet mastered it. Swordsmanship and Shunpo are still above themselves. However, Omida Nozomi didn't believe that she would still be so passive after freeing herself with the Zanpakutō. That's right, at this moment, Omida, no matter how confident she is, she doesn't think she can win. Island really put too much pressure on him. Has the Zanpakutō been liberated? Seeing Omida's appearance at this time, Island's expression became serious. During this period, Island also obtained some basic information about Omida Nozomi through Captain Furuta Aoki. His Zanpakutō Shuakameru is said to be a pure power-based Zanpakutō. Once, Vice-Captain Omida smashed a Jillian to pieces with one move. Well, Jillian Daigzu, this is a terrifying existence nearly 100 meters tall. Shinigami and elite Shinigami, even Jillian Daigzu's steel skin cannot be broken. If you want to deal with Jillian, you must have a 5th level spiritual power or above and have completed the 1st stage of Zanpakutō liberation. If an ordinary chief officer wants to kill a Jillian quickly, at least 3 or 4 people must work together. Omida Nozomi's ability to instantly kill Jillian Daigyu shows how powerful his Zanpakuto's attack power is. Faced with Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure increased 5 times and her strength greatly increased, Island did not dare to underestimate him. At that moment, Island poured his spiritual power into the dilapidated Zanpakutō in his hand and shouted, "Iron Broken Tooth!" Boom! As Island shouted loudly, the iron broken tooth in his hand finally revealed his true form. The slender and worn blade turned into a wide-toothed knife. The majestic spiritual power makes the tooth knife exude a dazzling halo of spiritual power. With the release of the Zanpakutō, Island's spiritual pressure has naturally increased. However, the semi-finished Tetsuya only brought Island a 3-fold increase in spiritual pressure. At this time, in terms of the strength of spiritual pressure, it was Omida Nozomi who had the upper hand. Chapter 14. After successfully making the iron broken tooth, Eren received the spiritual pressure feedback, and his spiritual pressure was not much different from Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure. However, after both of them released their Zanpakutō, Island's spiritual pressure was at least nearly half lower than Omida Kainajin's spiritual pressure. After all, Omida Nozomi has honed his Shikai to its peak, increasing his spiritual pressure by as much as 5 times. As for Island, this iron broken fang was only a semi-finished product. It transformed into a tooth knife and only brought Island 3 times the increase in spiritual pressure. There's a show. Feeling that Island's spiritual pressure was much lower than his own, Omida was overjoyed. The battle of Shinigami is ultimately a battle of spiritual pressure. Although Omida Nozomi's current spiritual pressure is not enough to reduce or even ignore the ability of the Zanpakutō. However, under the powerful spiritual pressure, his speed, strength, and defense were greatly enhanced. He couldn't believe it. Even though he had so much stronger spiritual pressure than Island, he would still lose. Ha! Thinking of this, Omida waved the huge mace in his hand and rushed towards Island. Facing the high-speed attack of Omida Nozomi, Island grasped Tai Suiya's handle tightly with both hands, raised Tai Suiya above his head, and slashed at Omida Nozomi. Boom! The gigantic Tetsuya is, to a certain extent, a Zanpakuto of the power and slashing type. However, compared with Omida Nozomi's Jukimaru mace, the bonus to strength is much worse. The iron broken teeth collided with the mace, and the huge force made Island's body shorter. Boom! A large crater with a radius of 5 meters exploded on the ground under Island's feet, and the cracks in the ground even spread to 10 meters away. What a power! At the bottom of the pit, Island's eyes widened, and the iron teeth of the mace crunched and trembled in his hand. Drink! Blue spiritual pressure burst out from Island's body, and the surge in spiritual pressure increased Island's speed and strength. Ryutsu bursts. This is a technique that many Shinigami know how to use Ryutsu. Strictly speaking, for a Shinigami with low spiritual pressure, this is a life-threatening technique. The principle is to gather one's spiritual pressure and suddenly explode it in exchange for an increase in strength in a short period of time. The side effect is that the spiritual pressure will be consumed at an extremely fast rate. The spiritual energy that can be used for fighting for an hour may be exhausted in less than 5 minutes. Clang! After using the Ryutsu burst technique, the battle between Island and Omida entered the most intense situation. On the ground of the training ground, huge pits appeared after the two men fought. After wiping out the gap in spiritual pressure through the burst of spiritual pressure, he relied on a much stronger swordsmanship than Omida Nozomi, allowing Eren to forcefully compete with Omida Nozomi's with an iron broken tooth of less than 1.2 meters. There is no losing in a fight between maces and maces. He even slowly suppressed Omida Nozomi in turn. However, although Omida Nozomi is temporarily at a disadvantage, his mentality is very stable. Under such circumstances, as long as Omida can hold on until Island's spiritual pressure burst ends, it will be his victory. Clang, 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 clang. Island's figure was like lightning, turning into afterimages to surround Omida. The sword lights were like nets, shrouding Omida. However, Island's attack was not very effective. Although Omida Nozomi has a strong body, his movements are silky smooth. Shunpo's attainments are among the second team, and he can also be ranked in the top 3. Well, now that Eren and Omida are included in Nozomi's ranking, I'm afraid they will have to move back one place. However, because Eren was running around Omida Nozomi, although his Shunpo speed was faster than Omida Nozomi's, the attack speed was not so fast that Omida could not react. In addition, the huge mace in Omida's hands is huge. He only needs to adjust the angle to hide most of his body behind the mace and use the mace to defend against Island's attack. In this way, Island's attack only caused a few wounds on the vital parts of Omida's Hijin's body, and it had little effect. Call out! Seeing that his attack was ineffective, Island didn't waste much spiritual power, flashed in an instant, and stood more than 20 meters in front of Omida's Hijin. So strong! Yes, both Vice Captain Omida and Island are so strong. At this moment, more than 400 Shinigami from the 2nd Division outside the training ground finally woke up from the fierce battle before. Their eyes seemed to be shining when they looked at Island and Omida's Hijin. Shinigami has never been a safe profession. Every year, many Shinigami sacrifice themselves. This is also the main reason why the Godi I-13 recruit Shinigami from the Mao Spiritual Arts Academy every year. With a strong teammate, everyone's survival probability will be greatly improved. Didn't you realize that in the most dangerous mission to rescue Xiaotalo's family, at least a dozen seriously injured people in the 2nd Division survived because of Ai-Lin? At this time, Ai-Lin showed great strength again, and his sense of security was immediately filled. After this battle, everyone believed that even if Ai-Lin did not succeed in the challenge, becoming the vice-captain of the 2nd Division, at least the position of chief officer would be indispensable. Urahara, what do you think? Shifon Yhwach looked at the two people in front and asked Urahara Kisuke. What do you think? Before Urahara Kisuke could answer, Aya, who was standing next to Yhwach, didn't hesitate. Mr. Yhwach immediately took over Yhwach's words without asking her. Yhwach-sama, although this guy named Aaron has some strength, he is still a bit inferior to Vice-Captain Omida, right? You see, he is now using methods like spiritual pressure explosion. When his spiritual power is exhausted, he will naturally be no match for Vice-Captain Omida. On the contrary, if Vice-Captain Omida even uses his spiritual pressure to explode, this guy named Ai-Lin will never be able to stop him. Oh, my opinion is opposite to yours. Urahara Kisuke glanced at Hyōsube funny, his confused eyes under his broken hair were unexpectedly more serious. The guy named Ai-Lin is going to win this battle. How is that possible? Hyōsube didn't believe a word of what Urahara Kisuke said. Judging from the situation just now, although Ai-Lin has gained some advantages through the burst of spiritual pressure, these advantages cannot be the key to determining victory or defeat. However, the next moment, Feng Shaoling's pupils suddenly shrank. I saw that the sword in the hand of the guy I was not optimistic about seemed to be surrounded by some wind. With Ai-Lin's wave, it turned into 3 huge slashes and attacked Omida. Wind injury. Chapter 15. It seems that I can't win this battle without using Tai Suiya's secret power. After calming down his breathing and feeling his remaining spiritual power, Ai-Lin shook his head slightly. Although his own Zanbei Shengyi are currently on the threshold of captain level, their spiritual pressure is insufficient, which is ultimately a flaw. Without strong enough spiritual pressure, no matter how strong your 4 Shinigami skills are, you will not be able to exert your due strength. The difference in spiritual pressure intensity between the 3rd-class spiritual power and the captain-level 2nd-class spiritual power is more than 10 times. Omida's Hijin has been the vice-captain for nearly 200 years, and her own strength has been polished to its peak. After liberating the Zanpakutō, Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure was not as good as the captain's usual state, but it was not far behind. If the captains don't release their Zanpakutō, it won't be easy to kill Omida Nozomi in a short time. Ai-Lin used a trick like spiritual pressure burst. If he didn't defeat Omida Nozomi when he had a surplus of spiritual power, when his spiritual power was exhausted, he would be like fish on the chopping board, ready to be slaughtered by others. Vice-Captain Omida, next, I am going to use the secret of the Zanpakutō. Since I successfully practiced this technique, I have never used it outside. Also, this move is very powerful, so please be careful, Vice-Captain Omida. What? The secret of Zanpakutō. Hearing Ai-Lin's words, Omida's pupils shrank. Every Shinigami, after giving birth to his own Zanpakutō, and the compatibility between the Shinigami and the Zanpakutō reaches a certain level, he will learn the name of the Zanpakutō from the mouth of the Zanpakutō. Then, Shinigami can complete the liberation of the Zanpakutō by calling its name. This is Shinigami's Shikai. The secret of Zanpakutō, these are the moves that only powerful Zanpakutō possess. Especially since even a person of Ai-Lin's strength said it was very powerful, it shows that this move is not simple. At the moment, Omida did not dare to be careless at all. Boom! The majestic spiritual pressure erupted from Omida Nozomi's body. Omida Nozomi also used tricks like Ryotsu burst. With the burst of spiritual pressure and the increase of Zanpakuto Shikai, Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure has already reached the second level spiritual power of captain level. Bring it on! Good. Seeing that Omida's Hijin was ready, Island no longer hesitated. Most of the spiritual pressure in his body flowed along Island's hand and poured into the iron-broken teeth in his right hand. Whirlwinds swirled around Tai Suiya's blade. Then, Island suddenly slashed his sword in the direction of Omida's Hijin. Wind injury. Ho-ho! 3 wind slashes transformed from spiritual power tore 3 deep ravines into the ground, carrying unparalleled power and attacking towards Omida. Drink! At the same time, Omida Nozomi's spiritual pressure also poured into his Zanpakutō, activating his strongest move. Drunkard Rage. Boom! Omida's Hijin blasted out a mace, hitting the 3 wind slashes struck by Island fiercely. Crunch, crunch! Boom boom boom! So heavy! Omida Nozomi held the mace in his hand tightly, drunkenly, and violently, which was the strongest secret of his Zanpakutō. However, his strongest secret could only barely resist the momentum of Island's slashing attack. The subsequent more and more powerful slashes still pushed Omida Nozomi's huge body back. His 2 feet drew 2 long grooves on the ground of the training ground. No, I can't stop it. After holding on for a few seconds, Omida's drunkard's violent remaining strength was exhausted, and she could no longer block the attack of Elan's wind wound. In the end, Omida Nozomi only had time to protect her vitals with the mace Jukimaru, and her whole body was sucked in by Island's wind wound. Ah! Whoosh! Omida Nozomi's screams were heard, and Island's eyes were dazzled. The next moment, the figures of Shifunji and Yhwach and Uraharakisuk appeared in the center of the training ground. In Uraharakisuk's hands, he was holding Omida Nozomi, who was covered in blood. So fast! Alan was shocked. Although I know that Shifon Yhwach and Uraharakisuk are very strong, knowing it in my heart and actually facing them are 2 different things. However, after all, Ailan is the one who has actually seen the captain-level powerhouse Bankai. Besides, Yhwach Shihoan and Uraharakisuk have not released their spiritual pressure, so the pressure they put on Ailan is really greater than it's not as good as Ailan's pressure when he faced Kisaragi Taiwu. What Shifunji and Yhwach and Uraharakisuk brought to Ailan was more pressure from Ailan's own heart. However, seeing the tip of the iceberg of their strength also made Ailan feel less stressed. At that moment, Yhwach directly intercepted the follow-up of Ailan's wind wound, while Uraharakisuk Shunpo came in front of Omida Nozomi and pulled Omida out of the power of the wind wound. The 2 acted lightly, with Uraharakisuk not freeing his Zanpakutō and Yhwach not using Shunkeiku. Obviously, neither Aaron nor Omida Nozomi is qualified to take Shihoan Yhwach and Uraharakisuk seriously. Yhwach-sama, Urahara 3 seats. Ailan restored the Tetsuya in his hand to its old state, inserted it into the scabbard at his waist, and bent down to salute Yhwach and Uraharakisuk. Now that these 2 have finished, this challenge can be considered to have come to an end. Ahem, puff. Omida, who was rescued by Uraharakisuk, coughed a few times and then spat out a mouthful of blood. However, even though he was seriously injured, Omida's Hijin did not do anything indecent. Instead, he gave Ailan a thumbs up and said with a smile, "Ha ha ha ha, that's awesome, little guy. This time a battle, I lost." Although at the end of the battle, everyone knew the outcome of this battle, hearing Omida Nozomi admit that he was defeated still made everyone watching the battle feel like a dream. Wow! Here, I'm not dreaming, am I? Vice Captain Omida actually lost. This battle made everyone in the 2nd Division feel ups and downs. Whether it was Aaron suppressing Deputy Captain Omida Nozomi at the beginning, or Deputy Captain Omida taking the advantage after the liberation of the Zanpakutō, to the ultimate duel between the 2 Zanpakutō. No one knows who the final winner is until the end. However, no matter whether it is Ailan or Omida Nozomi, no one has any opinion on who becomes the vice-captain of the second team based on the strength shown in this battle. Shinigami, even if he has a powerful background, he can't convince his subordinates without strength. Chapter 16. For example, Kukaki Sojun, the vice-captain of the 6th Division, the successor of the head of the four noble Kukaki family, and the son of the captain of the 6th Division, Kukaki Jinling, does his background have a deep enough background, right? But how many people in the 6th Division admire him? Kukaki Sojun, Shinigami's talent is not low. He completed the liberation of the Zanpakutō at a young age and gained the combat power of a chief officer. However, Kukaki Kangchun's physical fitness greatly hindered him. Due to the pain all over his body, Kukaki Sojun could only perform 5 or 6 points out of his very strong strength. Of course, speaking of physical ailments, Jaishur Yukatake, the captain of the 13th Division, is also plagued by illness and cannot display his strength in most cases. However, Jaishur Yukatake's talent is more than a little stronger than Kukaki Aokun's. Even if he cannot exert his full strength, Jaishur Yukatake possesses power beyond that of an average captain. This point cannot be compared to Kukaki Sojun. Now, Eren used his battle with Omida Nozomi to prove to everyone in the second team that he has enough power to become the vice-captain of the second team. Especially for Eren's final blow, no one present, except Shifunji and Yuryuaki and Urahara Kisuke, was confident that they could survive this move. Look, even if the subsequent slashes were defeated by Yuryuaki-sama, 3 ravines more than 3 meters deep and more than 50 meters long were left on the training ground. Sorry, Vice-Captain Omida. This is the first time I used this trick, but I couldn't master it well. Now that Omida's Hijin has given up, Ailen is naturally happy to show off. At that moment, Ailen walked up to Omida Nozomi in a few steps, stretched out his hands, and the green kite light instantly enveloped Omida Nozomi. Soon, under Ailen's kite, Omida's Hijin's injuries were almost healed. After all, the violent drunkard in front of Omida blocked a lot of wind damage's power. When he couldn't block it from behind, Yuryuaki crushed Ailen's slash, and Urahara Kisuke also saved him immediately. Therefore, Omida Nozomi's injury was still within the range that Ailen could treat. In less than a minute, Omida's Hijin's injury was completely healed by Ailen. Ha 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 ha, I once heard that Captain Uzuhawa said that he wanted you to join the 4th Division as the 3rd seat. At that time, I thought Captain Uzuhawa overestimated you, but now I think Captain Uzuhawa underestimated you, AI Forest. Standing up from the ground, Omida moved his body. Except for the tears on his clothes and some blood stains remaining on his body, he felt that he had fully recovered. Even Yamada Sanashuk can't achieve your kite ability. Yamada Sanashuk is currently the vice-captain of the 4th Division. His kite ability is only inferior to that of Anohanaretsu, the captain of the 4th Division. Vice-Captain Omida is joking, how can I compare to Vice-Captain Yamada? Regarding Omida's Hijin's praise, Ailen shook his head and did not really take it seriously. Yamada Sanashuk, this is the guy who created Hikoya together with Tsuneyashiro Tokinata, creating life. This is an area that Ailen has not yet touched. Of course, that was Yamada Sanashuk 100 years later, and the current Yamada Sanashuk may not have reached that level. Hey, Ailen, you defeated me upright, how could you be so self-defiled? Hearing Ailen's words, Omida Najijin was unhappy. What? In your mind, the vice-captain of our 2nd Division is not as good as the vice-captain of the 4th Division. Or is it that our 2nd Division team is not as good as the 4th Division team? This. Ailen was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect Omida's Hijin's reaction to be so big. However, Ailen thought about it. Among the 2nd team, whether it was the previous captain Shifunjin Senhai, the current captain Shifunjin Yuryuaki, and the next captain Sui Feng, the 3 of them together might not be enough. Captain Anohana fought. Captain Anohana is Siraidi's first-generation Kenpachi. He and Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni were known as 2 evil people 1,000 years ago. If Yhwach develops the Shunko Thunder God fighting type and the Thunder Beast fighting type, he may still be able to fight. If he has not developed these two forms, all three of them will be useless in front of Captain Anohana. However, now that I am in the second division, even if I really think so in my heart, I would be really stupid to say it out loud. How is it possible? Our second division is the strongest covered mobile force, and the fourth division is a rescue team, which is not at the same level as us. That's right. Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach and Urahara Kisuk looked at each other, and both sides could see the embarrassment in the other's eyes. These two people are really ignorant and fearless. Afraid that the two of them would say something shocking later, Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach quickly interrupted Omida Shinigami's words, and at the same time walked up to Island, raised Island's hand high, and faced the onlookers Shinigami. They loudly announced, "Everyone, this time the second division vice-captain challenges, witnessed by more than 400 division colleagues and me, the second division captain Yhwach Shihoan, the winner has been decided. Now, in the name of the captain of the second division, I announce that the winner of this challenge is Island. From now on, Aaron will take over the position of vice-captain of the second division. Former vice-captain Omida Nozomi will be exempted from the chairperson challenge and will share the third spot of the second division with Urahara Kisuk. Do you have any comments?" "No." Vice-captain Island, 3 seats in Omida. Vice-captain Island, 3 seats at Omida. Witnessed by more than 400 people from the second division of Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach, Aaron successfully defeated the former vice-captain Omida Nozomi and became the new captain of the second division. Later, with the help of Omida Nozomi, Island gradually became familiar with some affairs of the second team. However, more often than not, Island still forges weapons in his own mental space. After meeting Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach and Urahara Kisuk, 3 more Zanpakutō appeared on the Sword Hill in Island's mind space. 2 of them are on the same level as Kisaragi Taigo's Zanpakutō, and the latter one is located in the lower half of the hill. This is the Zanpakutō of Shihoan Yhwach, Urahara Kisuk, and Omida Nozomi. After successfully forging these 3 Zanpakutō, Elan's spiritual pressure was greatly enhanced. In particular, Yhwach Shihoan and Urahara Kisuk had already completed Bankai's Zanpakutō, which tripled Elan's spiritual pressure. Island's spiritual pressure is now 4 times stronger than those who have just been promoted to the 6th level of spiritual power. In other words, if a Shikai's Zanpakutō Shikai does not increase his spiritual pressure by more than 4 times, then his own spiritual pressure after the Zanpakutō Shikai is not as strong as Elan's normal situation. Chapter 17. The existence of captain level and second-class spiritual power are the most basic conditions. Only a second-class spiritual power can complete the realization of the Zanpakutō. Then, comes the ultimate liberation of the Zanpakutō, Bankai. During the day, Aaron and Omida Nozomi handle the affairs of the vice-captain together, and occasionally receive tasks. But those tasks were just a few more meritorious deeds in Island's credit book in front of Island, who had greatly increased his strength. At night, Aaron held the Zanpakutō of Yhwach and Urahara Kisuk of Shifunjin, absorbing their training memories to enhance his basic strength again. Yhwach Shihoan does not often use his Zanpakutō, so the swordsmanship experience Aaron gained from Yhwach's Zanpakutō is almost non-existent. However, Shifunji-Yuan Yhwach is most famous for her Shunpo accomplishments. Throughout the Seireitei, Yhwach is called the Flash Goddess by the Seireitei. Her Shunpo attainments are unparalleled. From Yhwach's Zanpakutō, Aaron gained Yhwach's Shunpo experience. What Aaron gained the most from Urahara Kisuk's Zanpakutō was the Kid ability. At the same time, based on the ability of Urahara Kisuk's Red Princess Blood Cloud Shield, Island successfully forged the scabbard of Tetsu Sugaya, giving his Zanpakuto's scabbard the ability to defend against barriers. In this way, the degree of completion of Tetsuyaya has been improved a bit, and the increase in spiritual pressure after Shikai has reached 3.5 times. Time passes through everyone's efforts. Hey! On this day, Aileen went to the captain's office to meet with Chiffon Yhwach due to matters in the squad. However, under normal circumstances, the person who connects with Aileen is Yhwach's little fangirl Hyōsube. Over the past few years, although Aileen and Feng Xiaoling had not spoken much, they were quite familiar with each other. This feeling. The moment he saw Hyōsube, Aileen narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the Zanpakutō at Hyōsube waist. Blue lines flashed in his eyes, but within a few seconds, Aileen completed the analysis of the Zanpakutō at Hyōsube's waist. Congratulations, Miss B. When are you going to start the Chief's challenge? Putting the file on the table, Aileen smiled and congratulated Feng Xiaoling. It is also a great joy for Aileen that Hyōsube has completed the conception of Zanpakutō. After all, Aileen has a weapon in his mind that is very suitable for two-hit kill. When I go back to make Suzumebachi tonight, that weapon will be available. Oh? You can actually see that I have completed the liberation of the Zanpakutō. Feng Xiaoling raised her head and looked at Aileen in surprise. Although she was beaten by that guy because she guessed wrongly during the Aileen challenge, which made Feng Xiaoling not have a very good sense of Aileen, but after a few years of getting along with her, her original tenacity has long since changed. Articles. Moreover, judging from the files he handled, Aileen, as a vice-captain, completed his tasks very beautifully. In addition, Aileen does not have the aristocratic airs of former deputy captain Omida Nozomi. Every time he goes on a mission, he takes the lead. When he encounters injured team members, he will also use Kide to heal their injuries. Over the past few years, Aileen has become deeply he gained the trust of his Shinigami, and his reputation completely surpassed that of former vice-captain Omida Nozomi. This made Feng Xiaoling identify a little more with Aileen. However, what surprised Hyōsube even more was that she had just completed the gestation of her Zanpakutō a few days ago, and yesterday she got the recognition of her Zanpakutō and completed the training of Zanpakutō Shikai. Even Lord Yhwach didn't notice it, but Vice-Captain Aileen noticed it at first sight? No, how could Lord Yhwach not see that? It should be that this achievement he has achieved is too insignificant in the eyes of Yhwach-sama, and he is not even qualified to praise it. But if I successfully challenge the chairman, will I be praised by Yhwach-sama? Is this the chief's challenge? Thinking of this, Feng Xiaoling tapped her head with the pen in her hand. Vice-Captain Aileen, this guy is very powerful, especially his Zanpakutō secret, which is called Wind Wound, right? That move could almost cover most of the area in front of Aileen, and Feng Xiaoling had no confidence in escaping from that move. The third seat, Yura Harakisuk, although Hyōsube can't stand this guy, she also knows that this guy's strength is hardly inferior to Lord Yhwach. The other three seats are former Vice-Captain Omida Nozomi. After thinking about the abilities of her own Zanpakutō and the abilities of Omida's three-seat Zanpakutō, Hyōsube simulated it several times in her mind and finally made up her mind. When Feng Xiaoling filled out the challenge form for the chief executive, Aileen stretched his neck and easily saw the name written by Feng Xiaoling. Oh? Ms. B actually wants to challenge Omida for the third seat. It seems that Ms. B's Zanpakutō ability is very strong. 3 seats in Omida are really unfortunate. Aileen shook his head and chuckled. This Omida is really unlucky. It is undeniable that Omida's Hijin is indeed very strong. However, the compatibility between him and Feng Xiaoling is 0. Before the spiritual pressure reaches a certain level, the two-hit kill of Hyōsube's Zanpakutō is really unsolvable. Omida's Ryutsu is much stronger than Sui Feng's, that's true. But his spiritual pressure is not enough to ignore Sui Feng's Zanpakutō abilities. It is not difficult to avoid Omida Nozomi's attack and wait for the opportunity to hit Omida Nozomi with Shunpo of B's Hasa. Hey? Don't make it sound like I've already won. Feng Xiaoling raised her brows, put away the file of her challenge to Omida's third seat, and glanced at Aileen. Although she didn't admit it, her eyebrows were raised a bit. After leaving the captain's room, Island returned to his dormitory. Buzz. Blue light shone, and a Zanpakutō fell from the sky and inserted into the sword mound. To Island's expectation, Sui Feng's Zanpakutō Suzumebachi was on the same level as those of Bankai's Zanpakutō. Oh! Island stepped forward and held his hand on the handle of Suzumebachi's knife. After a few seconds, Island showed a smile. This is really a big surprise.
वीडियोस बनाने हैं, फिल्मोरा है ना?